At the regional workshop held in 2023 in Jamaica to discuss the CDM blueprint, the CDM policy and legislation were identified as priority areas for the costed action plan for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Why were these areas significant for intervention, and has any progress been made towards achieving this?
The comprehensive disaster management policy and strategy, we would have attempted to do a policy strategy a few years ago, but recognizing a lot of things have changed. The landscape has continued to change. We also saw the impact of various hazards over the years affecting also the landscape within our country and the way we need to operate and do things differently. We have long recognized that in terms of the blueprint, our legislation, our CDM legislation need to update it. As a matter of fact, our legislation is not a CDM legislation. It was just a broad legislation that was passed in 2006. So in terms of the blueprint, looking at the different stages of from the country work program to the legislation to the policy and strategy, we recognize that the policy and strategy were key to actually propel the disaster management landscape within St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and hence we embarked on improving our policy and strategy last year in particular, in 2022 and 2023, and we thought that we needed to revise it in particular after the volcanic eruption in 2021, because it was our first really major response in a natural hazard from time NEMO came into existence in 2002. So it was really our first major national response in 2021, and of course in 2024, followed by that we had burial. So where we are, we actually have the final draft policy and strategy now before cabinet for approval. So we're hoping that within the next month that we'll be able to go that public and actually be able to say, yes, we have that approval for use nationally. But we are in this context too, we engage a bit more stakeholder engagement in the policy, because when we attempted to update it, it was actually during the pandemic time and there was no face-to-face consultation, and the virtual consultations really don't work. You don't get the meat out of the matters that you want to discuss. So we actually pushed it back, and actually we looked at after the had a relook after the volcanic eruption, and hence we are at the stage now where it is finalized with support from the USAID. We had support from CDM, we had support from the World Bank. So we're at this stage now, and we think it's quite a good document that we can actually put forward.
What role does the CDM blueprint play in advancing the National Disaster Management Framework, and how is the country addressing any barriers to implementation?
Okay, with the Comprehensive Disaster Management Blueprint in particular, we would have done, I want to focus here on the country work program, which really brought together a lot of the stakeholders and allowed us to demonstrate what CDM is all about. Because when you hear CDM, Comprehensive Disaster Management, what do you mean? So it allowed us, in terms of looking from the end-to-end blueprint, I like to say the end-to-end, in terms of the country work program, having the various sectors and the sectoral participation in looking at how we're going to build our resilience, where we are now, what are the gaps, and where we need to reach. And we use that within our sectors and our departments, our ministries, to look at the country work program, to actually identify the gaps, identify the resource challenges that we have, because that's one of the challenges, resource mobilization, because you want to achieve so much too in terms of your resilience building agenda. You want to achieve quite a bit, but how do you get there? And the agencies that you need to work closely with. So in looking at the CDM blueprint and looking at how we really actually advance it in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for persons to understand comprehensive disaster management is where we need to go, where we are now, and where we need to continue to go. And of course, you're going to get the different shocks, the different things happening that throws you off, because it's not a perfect world. And we are seeing those changes now in the climatic changes, the extreme heat we're having. First time at least in my living memory, we have had major water crises where we actually had to take water to the Grenadines early in 2024 during the dry period. So we are seeing different changes, and the policy framework now and the strategy is at that stage where it can actually address the changing environment that we're in.
Activity 1.7 of the BRICS program speaks specifically to tsunami preparedness. And in 2022, a public information drive was held in Bequia for schools and communities. What was the reception of this drive and some notable outcomes for the beneficiaries?
Okay, that particular tsunami initiative, tsunami program is one of our key activities in St. Vincent and Grenadines because we're a coastal community and we are a multi-island state. So all of the Grenadines, the Union Island community became one of the first tsunami-ready community in 2020 in particular, and then it was devastated now with Hurricane Beryl, so we have to start again. So we were looking to extend the tsunami program to several of the other Grenadine islands, and we identified Bequia as one of the key, and they were quite receptive. Our disaster group in Bequia, actually our district disaster group in Bequia, was one of the groups that really asked us to continue this education within Bequia, and we worked with them in terms of looking at we did a lot of, under the BRICS program, we did a lot of community education in the school program, introducing the program to the school, what is a tsunami, planning evacuation procedures with the schools, and actually simulation. And we tied it with the November 5th in terms of the World Tsunami Day, in terms of looking at evacuating the schools. There was a particular school and some members of the community looking at the evacuation route. It was quite receptive, well received, and it's something that we know we have to continue in all of the communities, the coastal communities in St. Vincent and Grenadines. And I know all of the islands want us to really do the tsunami smart, tsunami ready program within the islands.
Operational readiness is also a priority for the BRICS program. Has the logistics system training received fill any gaps, especially in the aftermath of an impact?
Operational readiness is also one of our key priority areas on our country work program. And we have been working with CDM and the World Food Program in particular in the logistics capacity enhancement. We would have had several programs over the last 3 years, and last year in particular, we would have done the logistics standard operating procedures. We have implemented this CDM logistics system, and St. Vincent and Grenadines is one of the few countries that actually fully operationalized the CLS or the CDM logistics system, and we're quite proud of it. That we are able to. It was first introduced following volcanic eruption, and we have used it now extensively, and this is what we use during the Hurricane Beryl. So the logistics support is tend to be one of the weaker areas because you don't often have logistics officers on board. But we have had to tap into the training and train multiple organizations, not just the NEMO team, but multiple organizations that support the national response in terms of logistics, the end-to-end logistics system, understanding what logistics is all about, the procedures, and the importance of transparency and accountability in the whole relief mechanism. So this support has really been tremendous. We have had also training, maybe not through the BRICS, but tied in the whole logistics capacity training in forklift, in the operation of forklift, and that was a hit. That was a hit because when we announced the news release and everything, we had persons calling us, we need to do this, we want to get on this training, and that's something that we're pushing again to have hopefully for 2025 we can have that training coming out of major Hurricane Beryl. So that was it is key. Logistics is key to all of the operations, and it was really welcome in St. Vincent and Grenadines.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Forbes, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It was my pleasure.